Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
What is up? We're back with another episode today to talk about 49ers free agency and a little bit of Jimmy Garoppolo and some QB carousel. How's it going, Rohan?
Man, busy week of NFL news, and I am all for it. It's a little exhausting with all the quarterback stuff, but I am all for it. How are you, man?
Doing great, man. It's very interesting. Past couple days, the legal tampering period, which in my opinion, there was already tampering going on before that. You could tell by how it always is. There's always tampering before the legal tampering period. And then next thing you know, boom, 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 deal after deal after deal. And then we have a QB who thinks he's in the NBA getting visits from the ownership and on a tour of visiting with teams and like he's in the NBA on it's a very interesting free agency period. The NFL is about to be shaken up with all the QBs moving around. Very interesting couple days.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we can hop right into it. Starting off with obviously the quarterback news. Last week when we started, we had the Russell Wilson news and we had the Aaron Rodgers news, right? And then we had the kind of the beginning of the Deshaun Watson news. But now we know Deshaun Watson, he is a hot commodity in the NFL, and obviously that puts Jimmy Garoppolo now on the back burner, right? Again, like he's been throughout this entire time. So, what are your original thoughts on the Deshaun Watson news, and where do you think, out of everything, where he ends up, and how is it going to be helpful for the 49ers?
So I won't talk anything about like the legal scandal and everything because that's a lot of people want to know the legal. I'm not a judge. I'm not a jury. I wasn't there. I'm not going to talk about that. But Deshaun Watson, the player, he's a very great player, right? So I think it's very interesting how the Houston Texans have been offered a couple deals from 4 different teams: the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, and Cleveland Browns. So all these teams have already offered deals, and from my understanding, the Houston Texans have accepted all of these deals, or at least are willing to work with the core of these deals to negotiate further. So that's my understanding. So I think that's very interesting now that the ball's in Deshaun Watson's hand in terms of where does he want to go, where does he want to play, and he gets to choose his destination. If I was actually Houston, what I would actually be doing is, okay, well, I want the best return. Even though, you could sit out another year, go ahead. Sit out another year, you don't make money again. You're not going to do that 2 years in a row. You know what I mean? Like if Houston really wants to get ugly and dirty, they could get ugly and dirty if they just say, hey, you know what? We're trading you to the team we want to trade you to. And out of those 4 teams, you've already said you would accept a trade to them. We're taking the best deal. We don't care where you want to go. So they could do that, but go ahead.
No, I agree with what you think because Watson really hasn't done the organization favors. I mean, they didn't do him favors with the old regime because obviously they didn't hire the guy he wants, but it's not up to them. And in my opinion, I was in a space the other day and I agreed with what one person said. GM Nick Caserio has done a very good job, I think, with the Houston organization and turning it around. He hired David Culley last year. I thought that was a great culture change. And while he fired him, he still has Lovie Smith, who was loved. And one guy that I was high on in free agency was Desmond King. But Desmond King essentially, he said, I want to return because I want to play for Lovie Smith. And that was something that was important to him. And so it seems like another good hiring by the Houston Texans, despite all the drama around them. He turned that franchise around. They now have first-round picks to use. So I think he was a good hiring. And when you look at it, I do think that they could definitely get the most value. But what it seems like right now is out of the teams that are offering deals, they seem very content with whatever they're getting. And the thing that really the thing that kind of hasn't wavered is the Deshaun Watson news. Like they have a consistent price that they've asked from every team. So I'd assume they're having teams match whatever they want. And then once they get it, then only they proceed with Watson. So I think they'll be content with whatever deal, but they could definitely try and maneuver things by having teams bid against each other because Watson has okayed 4 or 5 teams now in the Cleveland Browns, the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think he accepted Philadelphia, but those are the 3 teams. And then obviously There's a one wild horse team that I'm just forgetting off the top of my mind.
So it's the Saints, Atlanta Falcons, Panthers, and the Browns. And
Yeah,
supposedly there's another team that's in the mix that's trying to get their
Benjamin
name in
Albright
there.
said that.
And I'll be honest, I think it's the New York Giants, because think about it, if the New York Giants really, if they want to get creative, they have the 5th pick, they have the 7th pick overall. They could give 2 picks this year, plus they could give another 2 first-rounders in future drafts. So essentially, they're the only team, I believe, that could offer 4 first-rounders right now. They could potentially even go more, because for 4 first-rounders, you get your 3 that you're capable of trading in advance, and then you're able to get creative. Second rounders, Saquon Barkley. Would Houston be interested in Saquon Barkley, even though he's on an expiring contract? The weapons aren't great. You do have Sterling Shepard. You do have Kenny Golladay, which are way bigger upgrades than what he had in Houston, right? So the main receiver he had in Houston was Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins, until he got traded for a bag of chips and a 2-liter of soda, which was a stupid trade. So you have all of that. So it's all depending on where he wants to go. And that last team, if they come in and swoop him, that'd be very interesting. But let's talk about the teams that want him. So Carolina, they've been that team that's been around his name like the entire process. They even said, we're even if he's not charged next year, we're going to come after him next year. And they are. And then we have the team that surprises me the most is New Orleans Saints, but they just had Breeze retire, Peyton just retired, and everything. So all of that, they're trying to find themselves that quarterback, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But the thing for me is, what would the Saints have to give up, right? Because they want 3 first-rounders plus picks, but they already have a bunch of players on expensive contracts. They have Michael Thomas, who restructured his contract. They have Marshawn Lattimore. They have their left tackle is a stud. What can I?
Teron Armstead.
No, they actually let Teron Armstead walk in free agency. They haven't
But
signed
he may
him.
come back. He may come back with Watson's there. But you're talking like they have who on Andrews Pete. They have Eric McCoy. They have Cesar Ruiz. They have a fairly solid offensive line.
But they even have what his last name starts with Ramses or
Ryan Ramczyk. Yeah.
So they have Ramczyk. I'm bad with names. So they have Ramczyk. They have Alvin Kamara, but the thing is Alvin Kamara might be in jail. Remember, he has that charge that he's facing in Nevada, and Nevada's laws are a lot harder on that situation. So that's the thing that they have to deal with. They also have going to the next team. The Saints team defense is a very solid defense. But what do they have to give away? Because the Houston Texans aren't just going to take picks. The reports are saying that they also want a player or two. What player do the Saints give up that the Texans say that's the guy we want? I'm guessing Marshawn Lattimore.
I'm actually guessing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think he's
Gardner-Johnson, because they just lost Justin Reed. But whatever player they lose defensively, it's going to hurt their defense drastically. They don't have the depth, and then they're going to give up all these draft picks to even replace that guy. So that's an interesting one. Atlanta's the team that has me like, whoa, hold your horses, because this is a team that Deshaun Watson said, hey, come get me. He called Arthur Banks.
Yeah, he's the one that called. That's very interesting, because he's obviously from Atlanta, Georgia. So when you look at it, Deshaun Watson was the one who reached out to Atlanta. Then Arthur, I forget, I think it is Arthur Blank, the owner, said, guess what? I'm actually interested in Deshaun Watson. They told Matt Ryan last week or earlier this weekend that, guys, Matt Ryan, we're actually going to look into Deshaun Watson. We're just letting you know for due diligence. And the one thing is, the report last week was that the Atlanta Falcons were restructuring the contract. That move has not been processed yet, because the Atlanta Falcons might be in the mix to trade Matt Ryan. So the Atlanta Falcons are certainly a possibility for Deshaun Watson. Quickly speaking on the Saints, though, when you look at it, you're right. They don't have as much cap space, especially if they acquire Watson. And while they are maneuvering a lot by pushing cap to later years and hoping that the NFL media deal kind of covers that, they're probably going to have to trade 2 players, right? The Texans have asked for 2 players from every team. And it looks like with the extension of Bradley Roby earlier today, it looks like Paulson Adebo is likely in that deal. Paulson Adebo, the young corner who they drafted last year, seems like he could be in that deal. He was the starter over Bradley Roby, yet they extended Bradley Roby. He was already on a $10 million deal this earlier today. So it seems like he's part of the deal. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson might be part of the deal. They might ship both off and keep Lattimore or something like that. But it seems like one of those cornerbacks is going to be on the move, and that is going to be a little bit of a detriment, right, to that Saints defense. But in reality, right now, it looks like it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons' decision. Sorry, not Atlanta Falcons. It's going to be Deshaun Watson's decision. The Houston Texans seem content on sending him wherever Watson wants to go just to get out of this kind of mess. Maybe the 49ers should listen and do that with Jimmy Garoppolo, but who am I to judge?
So the thing is, I do think it's between. I don't think the Browns are in it at all. I did hear.
I agree. 100% agree.
I did hear that the Saints, why can I not think of their name? The Panthers, and the Atlanta Falcons all had great meetings with him. So now it's literally just, where do you want to go at this point? And realistically, if he really wants to go back home, why not go to Atlanta? And that benefits the 49ers, because the 49ers, as the title of this episode is, but Jimmy Garoppolo is still around. He's still on the team. The 49ers had to keep him into the new league year. They restructured a couple players in order to get under the cap. So all this the Watson deal and all that stuff's going on, but we have Jimmy Garoppolo that the Niners are floating over like a puppet. We have Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, bro, no one wants your Jimmy Garoppolo. They all want Watson, bro. Like, leave them alone. Leave them alone so they could handle business over there and stop trying to deal Jimmy Garoppolo to these teams. The team that has no interest in Deshaun Watson, but they should have their name in there. I don't know why they don't. The Indianapolis Colts, but they got declined.
They actually got rejected.
They got, which is funny, because why would you even call your division rival like, hey, I want that quarterback? Like, that's stupid.
You sometimes got to make that call. Like, I mean, some teams, but it's 100% never going to happen. The only team that I could see trading for a division rival is Jimmy Garoppolo going to Seattle, because, I mean, I don't see it happening, but like, I'd just love to ship Jimmy Garoppolo over to Seattle. I mean, he'd love to probably see us 2 times a year after how we treated him this past year. But I mean, I'd love to face him 2 times a year.
So let's talk Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit, because I know that's pretty much what everyone wants to know. Or should we talk free agents first and let them wait?
We can talk Garoppolo. Let's do it. But starting off, right, Garoppolo's market right now, we thought we were screwed for a little bit because the Indianapolis Colts seemed like the only legitimate answer to acquire Garoppolo. But the Indianapolis Colts also have had a very keen interest in Marcus Mariota. They're looking probably to leverage both situations. They're telling Mariota we potentially have an offer for Jimmy Garoppolo to try and lower his deal. They're also trying to lower the draft compensation probably with the 49ers by saying, we have Marcus Mariota if you don't want to come. Because right now, a lot of quarterbacks, including Cleveland's quarterback, who I'll get to in a minute, want to play for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, who wouldn't want to? You have a running back right there. You have a wide receiver 1 in Michael Pittman, and you have a very solid offensive line. So a lot of quarterbacks probably want to go to Indianapolis. And I mean, Deshaun Watson, I don't think he'd declined the trade. I'm sure he'd love also to go to Indianapolis if that was a choice, but it's not, obviously. But yeah, right now the Indianapolis Colts seem to have multiple options. But the thing is, when this Watson deal ends up happening, it seems like a couple of teams could enter the sweepstakes. If he goes to New Orleans as expected right now, Matt Ryan, I think he stays in Atlanta then. Then we have the Carolina Panthers in the market, and we probably have the Cleveland Browns in the market, because the Cleveland Browns do not seem content with Baker Mayfield right now. Chris Mortensen reported of ESPN today, they want an adult. That's so funny. They want an adult at quarterback. That just means they want a veteran in Baker Mayfield. I mean, Baker Mayfield didn't really take his situation seriously. 24 hours in to these trade rumors, he puts out a Twitter kind of thing, thanking his time in Cleveland and how the Cleveland Browns, it's like ball in their court. Jimmy Garoppolo never did that, but I mean, I'm not here to say anything on that. But yeah, he could end up going to the Browns. But I think the good thing about this Watson deal, if it happens over the next day or two, is they're going to be suitors now for Garoppolo, and the Colts might not be the only ones. And I think teams now are going to want the best available option, right? The Colts know that Garoppolo probably is the best available option. They could look to sign him to an extension. So it might take a little bit for a deal to formulate, but he will be the best available quarterback on the market should Garoppolo go to Watson go to the Saints, because Matt Ryan will stay in Atlanta, and that frees up a little more a couple of places for Jimmy Garoppolo. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, I absolutely agree. So you talk about Marcus Mariota, right? The only part that I question is if the Indianapolis Colts are really serious about Marcus Mariota, why wouldn't they have already assigned him?
Yeah, I mean, why
Or
not?
think about it.
They're
Like,
waiting for
why
other teams to get in the mix. Like, why would you do that?
why would you wait for Jimmy Garoppolo for a deal to go through when another team could come in and swoop on Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't think they're in on Marcus Mariota at all unless they
Yeah,
end up
I
signing
agree.
him. Then that shows that they're in on him. But I think that's just a
It
lot of
just doesn't seem
fluff.
like it right now. I think Garoppolo is their 1A. They're just trying to get the best trade possible. Because, I mean, the Colts right now, if they can maneuver something before the Watson deal, then they win this deal, because Garoppolo is probably going for a day 3 pick at this moment until the Watson deal happens. But San Francisco, they've stuck it out for a while. They haven't announced the Ward signing and everything. They're waiting for this trade to happen. But I think they're going to try and salvage as much value as possible. I think that's been kind of their idea the entire time. They wanted 2-2s reportedly, and so might try and stick to that price with 3 teams in the mix potentially for Garoppolo and 3 teams looking to compete in 2022. So they might stick in the mix and try and get as much value as possible, which could go to the Colts' detriment. Because it's funny, right? We think the 49ers are overplaying their hand, and then the Indianapolis Colts might be doing the exact same thing right now. But yeah.
And that's the thing, like, so the Colts are interested. The Browns obviously want an adult quarterback. So I played quarterback before. I'm an adult, so I might just at the Browns on Twitter, like, hey, y'all need an adult
I mean,
quarterback.
I
could be
play
very
quarterback.
professional.
I'm not necessarily an adult. I'm not that old. I'm not like your 30-year-old Jimmy Garoppolo, but I mean, I played quarterback for a good 6 months. Put me in there.
Yeah, like I could definitely play quarterback. I mean, I used to play it a little bit, so I'm gonna throw my name in there. I mean, might as well. Never know who they just want an adult. I mean, what the hell does that mean? But
Yeah,
so I think the Browns could be a suitor. I think the
definitely.
Carolina Panthers could be a suitor. If the Saints don't get them, I think the Saints could be a suitor. And then you have the Colts. So potentially there could be 4 teams trading for Jimmy Garoppolo if he ends up
Yeah,
going to Atlanta. So that's where I hope he goes, is Atlanta, because now there's a market for Jimmy Garoppolo. Frank Wright, Frank Wright, the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, the reason why he's not signing Marcus Mariota is because I believe his career as a head coach in Indianapolis rides on the decision he makes at quarterback this year. If he does not get in the playoffs, he will be fired. Matt
Well, I
Rule,
won't go as far, but here's
I
the
think
one
he
thing I'll
is,
say
man.
about okay, that's interesting, because like you're right, the Colts don't have stability at quarterback, and it does ride on ownership, the GM, and the head coach to make that work, right? Frank Wright was the guy who absolutely advocated for Carson Wentz. That experiment failed, and it costed the Colts a first and a third round pick. But when you look at, like, the one thing I'll say about Garoppolo or the Saints, I don't think the Saints are in the mix for Garoppolo should they fall out on that or on Deshaun Watson. The reason being, the Saints already owe Jameis Winston a good amount of dead money. I think it's like $4.5 million in total, and I think it's in void years. So I think that if they do miss out on Watson, they're probably more inclined, just for cap purposes, to retain Jameis Winston. That's kind of why I've been a proponent of him going to the Saints. But yeah, continue on. Matt Rule is another guy on the hot seat, and I
Yeah,
agree with
yeah.
you there.
So the reason why I think, like, you answered it pretty much, why I think the Colts are um, on the hot seat with Frank Reich. So he goes and
Right.
preaches to the ownership, to his general manager, that Carson Wentz is this guy that I could lead my team with. And then next thing you know, he's like, "Well, bro, this guy's not even a good leader. Like, what are you doing here?" Right. So then now you have the 49ers who are like, I have a good leader. Do you want him? But then if he doesn't get the QB right and he loses, you're out. So that's why he's waiting on Jimmy G. And then we go to the Carolina Panthers. Matt Rule's on the hot seat. He hasn't had a winning season since he's got to the Carolina Panthers. That's why he's so hard pushing for Deshaun Watson, because if he gets Deshaun Watson, they have a good enough defense. They're going to win. They're probably going to make the playoffs. They have good weapons, a good running back. So they most likely make the playoffs. So that for Matt Rule, he's trying to save his job. So those two
Right.
teams right away are trying to save their jobs. And then Cleveland, they're trying to get rid of Baker. Why not bring in a guy who knows the system, who's a good leader, who is an adult? That kind of makes sense. But at the same time, the quarterback isn't there. But the thing is, it's only a 1-year trial period, right? You don't have to extend Jimmy. You can say, hey, look, this is your chance to earn your stripes with our team, and they could potentially even draft a quarterback in the draft because they're not going to need a first rounder to get Jimmy. So that it's just a lot of interesting things that could go on with Jimmy Garoppolo. I do think that unfortunately, we have to wait until Deshaun Watson's traded, which is very sad because if Deshaun Watson chooses that he wants to go somewhere tomorrow, I'm busy all damn day tomorrow until from 7 to 10 at night. And then on Friday, I work, and then I'm setting up my goddaughter's quinceañera, and then Saturday is the quinceañera. So it's like I'm busy all damn day. So I want to be able to talk about football.
Just because of that, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen, and I know for sure, like that's just like it's literally like the world hates me, like you know what? Let's just do this when you're busy as shit, so you can't talk football, and it bugs the shit out of me all damn day because I know I can't talk about it. So that it's gonna happen too. I know it's gonna happen either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday when I cannot talk about it.
Yeah.
And I'm at the
reports are coming out that it could happen tomorrow. It could have happened today. We could have talked about it on the pod, but no, it's gonna happen tomorrow.
It's gonna happen. I'm gonna have to hop on a space to like talk while I'm driving because I need to get football off my mind, right? But let's go a little bit into free agency. Obviously, Jimmy G capped the 49ers. You kind of handcuffed them in a way that they couldn't go out and sign free agents. There's some people on Twitter, I'm not going to say no names, but they're saying that it's best if the 49ers keep Jimmy Garoppolo, even if the cap hit, blah, blah, blah. Just because that face, David Lombardi said it. He said it's better if the 49ers make room for him to ride the ship. No, actually, it's not, because they could have went out and they could have signed another safety that along Jimmy Ward, big money. That $25 million could have helped them, even though they had to restructure no matter what. Okay, but it's true. They had to restructure players no matter what, because the cap hit, they're not gonna cut Jimmy to get that cap space. So no matter what, they're gonna have to restructure a player no matter what to get under by 1 p.m. today. So no matter what, they had to restructure some contracts. But if they would have had a deal in place with Jimmy, what they could have did was, okay, now we can negotiate with players because we have that $9 million that we got from the restructure of Arik Armstead and George Kittle, and then we could have had another $25 million to spend around and go shopping. But unfortunately, they didn't. They end up going shopping, but not as how the 49ers want. Let's not talk about the big signing they have. Let's talk about the newest, let's go with most recent signings, and then we'll talk about a few departures. So talk to me about what you think of defensive tackle Hassan Ridgeway.
So real quick, before I talk about Ridgeway, I do want to give a little pushback on that idea. I do think the 49ers, I think they've executed their own plan for free agency so far. The cap space wise, here's what I'll say. I don't think it necessarily constrained them like in signing the guys that they wanted. I didn't think that they were going to go after a splash player just because of the market value. Edge seemed expensive right now. I thought the cap that they could have signed an edge was 13 to 15 million, regardless of the player. Chandler Jones, who I thought they could have got 17 and a half, and it was a 3-year deal, which might have been a little too long for the 49ers likes. Von Miller got a 6-year deal, which is mainly a 4-year deal, but still at 32, that's a little more of a long-term deal for Von Miller, which would have been probably out of the 49ers range. He got 20 million a year, although it's 17 and a half as well for the first 4 years. So I thought the edge market was a little too expensive. The only other place that they were looking to sign a big name guy was in the secondary, and they got that guy, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I don't think that it necessarily constrained them in signing the guys that they wanted. However, you're right. When you're going into negotiations right now, it's only that the only thing that you can do is have deals in place, although you can't make them official until this trade is over. So it either constrained them because they only could get deals in place when players do want to make sure that they have a confirmed destination, or they'd have to value, do we want to sign this player or do we want to continue pushing money back by restructuring? Because they'd have to restructure more contracts to fit in other players into the budget, which I think would have hindered them in the long term. So that's kind of like the decision that they have to make. So I do agree that Garoppolo kind of not altered, but it kind of puts you in a little bit of a constraint. But I do think the 49ers are content with how free agency's gone for them. And that's where I'll start off with Hassan Ridgeway. 1-year deal, $2.5 million with $1 million guaranteed. I really like this signing. I think that Hassan Ridgeway, he's a versatile defender. He's got the size. Like Hassan Ridgeway is the ideal 49ers player. That's what I'm saying because he's got the size. He's 305 pounds. He's a big bodied guy at defensive tackle, at nose tackle, but he's also got the athleticism. And I think that that's what the 49ers covet in these players that they're trying to build because he doesn't necessarily have the production. He's had a little bit of an up and down injury kind of season with the Philadelphia Eagles after being traded from the Indianapolis Colts. But I do think that he has the potential. And that's what the 49ers are looking for with guys that Chris Cassera can develop. These guys that are athletic freaks, very similar build to a guy like DJ Jones, who's an athletic freak at 315 pounds, and you get him on only a $2.5 million deal with $1 million only guaranteed. It's a very low risk kind of signing, and I think that if you can develop him in this rotation, maybe not give him as big of a role this year, but re-sign him and give him a bigger role next year. Because you got guys like Maurice Hurst, Kevin Givens, and a strong defensive tackle rotation right now. But you get him snaps, get him some pass rushing ability, and have him rush alongside a guy like Armstead, who provides you with one-on-one capabilities. I know you said that when we were talking, provides them with one-on-one capabilities, and that's what kind of like you want out of these these kind of guys who need to prove it. Give them one-on-one opportunities and see how they work. And that's how players have worked in space with the 49ers so far. And I think that is something that Hassan Ridgeway could provide. He's only 27 years old. So even if he has a good year, you could bring him back and still get him throughout the duration of his prime. I like the signing, low risk, high reward for the 49ers with a great athlete.
I absolutely agree. I actually love the signing. So I have watched Hassan Ridgeway when I was watching the 49ers tape against the Philadelphia Eagles. He has a quick burst. A quick step. He has more power than I initially thought when I was watching tape. So that was interesting. I was like, whoa, he actually has more pop in his step because he's more so known for his quickness and everything. So that's a great thing because you need power in order to anchor down and be a defensive tackle who could stop the run as well. But his biggest suit for the 49ers is going to be a pass rusher. His first step as a pass rusher is very, very good. And he's going to be alongside defensive players like Arik Armstead, Nick Bosa, honestly, Ebukam too, because those guys are going to command a little bit more attention. Like just signing for a player who could produce just like DJ Jones, but at a fraction of the cost. I believe the 49ers did a very, very, very good bargain signing with Hassan Ridgeway. So I do like the pickup. The 49ers ended up getting a depth linebacker as well, Oren Burks. Talk to me about what you think about Oren Burks.
Now, to be honest, my first initial reaction was we're paying another Demetrius Flanagan-Fouts at a cost of $2.5 million a year. But when I look at it, Oren Burks, he's an interesting guy because he's also a young guy. I think he's only 25 years old. He's a linebacker. And what have the 49ers done with linebackers in the past? We've got DeMeco Ryans, essentially the linebacker whisperer. You know, we call people quarterback whisperers. DeMeco Ryans is the linebacker whisperer. We've had a third-round pick, a fifth-round pick, and an undrafted free agent at linebacker. All three of them have been quality starters on this team at times when we needed them. And Azeez Al-Shire, the undrafted guy, Dre Greenlaw, the fifth-round guy, and Fred Warner, the all-pro third-round pick. So I think that he definitely has the ability to grow. And I think I've gotten a little less harsh on the signing for the sole reason that special teams aces, or whatever you call them, like special teams aces, I guess, is what you call these guys who predominantly play on special teams and play at a high level. Despite Oren Burks playing on a weak group last year, he has the special teams ability. And these guys who play predominantly special teams have been expensive this offseason. Jakeem Grant, predominantly a returner with some upside as a receiver, he signed for $4.3 million per year on a 3-year extension with the Cleveland Browns. So I think that, you know, it's you have to take it a little bit with a grain of salt just because that's the market for these special teamers this year. People are kind of putting a little more emphasis towards signing them. And I do like one part of it, and that's the 49ers are addressing their weaknesses, right? They came into this offseason with really struggling with their special teams unit. They were like a bottom 5, bottom 6 unit last year, I think 28th or 27th in special teams, special teams ability. And so that's why I'm thinking signing this guy, even if it costs a little more than expected, it is a good signing because it provides you with another body on that special teams guy who has proven himself at times in special teams. And you also have the upside of a linebacker. And also the it's a 2-year, $5 million deal, but only 2.5 of the 5 million is guaranteed. So we have to wait to see how the contract is structured. It could be an incentive-based deal to get to 5 million. And it might not seem as bad as it sounds. But at the worst case, you have a 25-year-old who has proven himself on special teams, adds to our special teams unit at a price, and it looks like the 49ers are just trying to upgrade where they showed weaknesses in 2021.
So for me, I think this is a good signing because special teams is undervalued, and you got him at a $2.5 million average per year, which is a very, very, very cheap deal for a special teamer, but also someone who has upside as a nickel linebacker.
Right.
So that's the athleticism he has as a nickel linebacker. For me, I'm totally fine with it. Develop your special teams. You get a new special teams coordinator. Ask him, what do you think of our special teams unit? What do you need? I need a guy who's athletic, who could tackle, who's a sure tackler. Okay, I got you. I got you that guy who has upside as a linebacker. And like you said, D'Amico Ryans is capable of developing these linebackers. Javon Holland, the linebacker coach, they are capable of developing linebackers. So this tells me that one of these guys is on the block. Is Dre Greenlaw on the block? Because
it seems like he's the odd man out. If the 49ers don't keep these 5 linebackers, because the 49ers, I don't think they ran with 5 linebackers last year, unless you consider Marshall Harris linebacker. Yeah, they've got 5 linebackers now on the roster with Flanagan Fowles in the mix. And you're right. Dre Greenlaw is the only one who doesn't really have a long-term future at this moment with the team because he's on a 1-year deal. And Azeez Al-Shire, we just tendered him. What do you think?
I definitely think that Dre Greenlaw is on the market because Demetrius Flanagan Foles is a guy who could be in coverage and everything a little bit better than Azeez Al-Shire and, in my opinion, Dre Greenlaw. So you have a guy who could match up on players in DFF. So when you're capable of having a guy like that, you just need a guy who's depth piece now because I don't think if we look at the 49ers, they didn't really have many linebackers on the field at one time. They try to go smaller. They try to go faster. That the style of D'Amico Ryans essentially. He went smaller and faster and had more nickel rather than being in base, which is smarter because teams in the NFL are starting to pass more. So you have to get smaller, you have to get faster in order to keep up with these guys. So that's why I think Dre Greenlaw is on the move, even though he is one of those smaller and faster guys. His inability to cover, in my opinion, like Demetrius Flanagan Foles, and I believe Burks, it has the upside to be a nickel linebacker. I think he has to be on the block because he's on a 1-year deal. He's taken up $2.5 million, I believe.
Yeah,
so they could save.
Yeah,
they could save 2.5. And you could also draft a linebacker later in the draft or in the middle of the draft. We have all these draft picks instead of paying a guy $2.5 million because we have to remember we have to fill a 53-man roster under the salary cap. And how do you do that? You have to draft players who could fill positions at a cheap cost. So I think someone's going to be gone. I think the 49ers really like Azeez Al-Shire. I think he should be extended during this year or maybe even after this year.
I'm expecting one.
Yeah, and then the fact that they brought in Burks to be a special team ace and a guy who could play a Sam role. He could definitely play that Sam backer role. So for me, it's like, why would we pay an extra player $2.5 million this year if he's not going to be on the field much? It just doesn't make sense. You could use that money to go get a guard, go get another defensive
tackle.
Like a backup someone. So you could use that money elsewhere. So it makes more sense to actually ship Dre Greenlaw off, get a 5th-round pick, whatever you can get for him. Use that as draft capital to trade back up in the draft, or even just take a linebacker with that pick. It just makes sense. It's the way the Shanahan and John Lynch era has gone. They haven't had to start trading players away because cap numbers. They haven't been so cap tight. But then COVID and everything. So I think this is the part where John Lynch he learned from Bill Belichick. This is the part where he takes a page out of Bill Belichick's book and says, you know what? Let's get rid of him, get a draft pick, and we'll just redraft that guy. So that's something they could look at, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back a bit and say the argument of like the best part for the 49ers, especially something they've lacked in the last couple of years, not necessarily at linebacker, but at other positions, is availability. And I know Dre Greenlaw was injured with a groin injury for the majority last season, but we did see how Azeez Al-Shire face some injury problem. I'm not saying he's injury prone, nothing near that, but he did have some injury for 2 weeks. I think it was like something some sprain, maybe a sprained knee or sprained ankle or something like that, that sidelined him for 1 to 2 weeks this season. And so you're right. Availability, you're right in that we have a loaded room now. But the thing is, the 49ers could also look at availability. The only issue right now, you said it, nailed on, the price tag. We're now paying Warren Burks in that $2.5 million range. We're paying Dre Greenlaw in that $2.5 million range. And we gave a second-round tender to Azeez Al-Shire, which means we're paying him $4 million as well. So just in those 3 players, we have $9 million allocated, and that's just to play, essentially, just to fill up one starter role, essentially. And that linebacker right next to Fred Warner, who we're also paying at a premium. We're paying him as the highest or second highest paid linebacker, inside linebacker in the NFL. So we're paying a premium at linebacker, and that's a position we've been able to develop. So Drake Greenlaw just may be the odd man out because he's on a 1-year deal. And given his role with the team this upcoming season, he likely isn't going to return. He probably wants a starter job elsewhere. And so if we have the ability to tender him next year, it just doesn't seem like he's coming back. And I don't think we do have the ability to tender him. I think he's an unrestricted free agent next offseason, if I'm not mistaken, which means that he likely goes and gets something elsewhere. So you're right. You might want just to get some draft capital in return. If you can get somehow a 4th-round pick for him, that's a great deal because you traded or you signed him with a 5th-round pick and you've gotten value out of him over the last 3 seasons. So if you can get a 4th-round pick, even a 5th-round pick for him, that's great. And the 49ers, you're right in that they're starting to have to deal with these cap constraint type things. But we saw this last year, and he's a player of a lower caliber, but we saw the 49ers being willing to move players when they have a loaded position. At linebacker last year, they traded Jonas Griffith for a 6th-round pick. They swapped 7th-rounders with the Denver Broncos when they had a loaded linebacker room. They also had to let Justin Hilliard go, their undrafted free agent signing. But they've been able to move on from these linebackers and be fine. And so that's why I think Dre Greenlaw might be the next one to go. And you rock with 4 linebackers with the potential to draft one as well with one of those later picks because the 49ers are loaded with those draft picks this year.
Oh, yeah, that's the way they honestly should go. I mean, why keep a guy who you don't have any plans for this year? Because he's honestly not better than Azeez Al-Shire. I don't care what people say. He's not better than Azeez Al-Shire. Everyone thinks the best plays from Dre Greenlaw are from one game, the Seattle Seahawks game.
Right. And that's what everyone like. The reason that people don't like Azeez, right, like you said, is people go to the memorable moments, and that's what Dre Greenlaw has.
Yeah, and when we look at Azeez, so Azeez last year, when the time that Fred Warner was out, Azeez stepped up, he balled out. Azeez had some injury concerns as well, but he's the better player. You just keep better players, and you got to do what you got to do sometimes. And the thing is with the 49ers, it's very hard to watch them keep players who aren't as good or you have the opportunity to gain capital on them or whatever. Get rid of them. Do it now. Just like they did with Jimmy G. They should have took what you can and run, right? Same thing like they do with Dre Greenlaw, even though they're not as 2 different positions and everything. But let's talk about the cornerback position. But before we talk about the cornerback position, what's up, my guy? How's it going? If you're watching on Periscope, on Twitter, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you go and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you tap in with us at all times because at any moment, Rohan might go live as soon as the 49ers trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and I might have to just call him. And I might have to be on. I might look like this when it happens because I'm going to be only audio.
You might be in the caller.
Yeah. So it might happen. So for make sure you tap in, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. But let's talk about the main free agent the 49ers signed. And I'm gonna have you let's first talk about the numbers and then let's talk about the player, all right? Because I have some concerns about how much they pay him initially. Initially I did, but then we'll talk about it. So obviously the 49ers signed Charvarius Ward. Let me know what you think about his contract that he got.
So the funny thing is, I was actually the 1 hour that I was off Twitter on Tuesday night was the hour that they signed Charvarius Ward. So while many people had their reactions, I at least was able to absorb it a little bit when I came back and saw the news. Charvarius Ward signed a 3-year. It's about a 42 million in total, with about 26.7 million in guarantees. The first thing when you look at it is Charvarius Ward a $14 million per year corner? But really, it's a little more complicated than that. It's only 26.7 million in guarantees with a deal that works up to 42 million. So when you look at it, it's not as bad as it seems. The 49ers also have a great way of structuring contracts. So Charvarius Ward might not seem like as bad of a deal. And the thing is, when I look at it, I'm not as mad at the compensation, because we look at the cornerback market, right? J.C. Jackson, I think that was a steal of a contract at 16.5 million a year. But he got 16.5 million a year. The thing is, though, the 49ers, they were not in the mix. When you think about it, the 49ers were like, even if they showed interest, the thing is that nobody was going to match the Chargers being able to pay him 28 million in that first year. The 49ers don't have that cap. And that's where I think Charvarius Ward's deal is going to completely differ. They paid him 28 million in the first year, and I think it's 40 million over the first 2 years in that contract in guaranteed money. For the 49ers, though, like when you look at the rest of the market, right? Stephon Gilmore is likely going to get 15 million a year. Carlton Davis, I think he got 15 million a year. Carlton Davis got 15 from the Buccaneers.
Yep.
So that's just how the market was playing out. So getting Charvarius Ward at 14 a year, it doesn't seem as bad. And I think a little bit of the concern alleviated for me, especially when the Jacksonville Jaguars signed Darius Williams to a 3-year, I think $39 million deal today. And when you look at that, Charvarius Ward making just $1 more million, and I think Charvarius Ward is a way better corner in my opinion. And so that's why I think that it was an all right deal for the 49ers.
So I laughed when he said the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they've been spending money like it's no tomorrow, but they're spending the money on the wrong players. I mean, but that's another topic, right? But so when I had concerns on his contract, so the reason why I had concerns is because we look at Carlton Davis, right? His contract obviously was the 15 million average per year, and he's getting 31 million in guarantees. So the 49ers actually are paying Ward for 4 million or 5 million less in guarantees and 1 million less a year. Carlton Davis has actually traveled as a number one corner and matched up with the best receivers on opposing teams. Ward has not. He's matched up on some of the best players.
He's done it though.
I haven't seen him travel.
Or sorry, you're right. He's matched up on some of the best players. Like I think the players find him anyway, and he matches up. But okay.
Yeah, but he doesn't travel the field like Carlton Davis does. So for me, it's like, well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure they were snooping around Carlton Davis. If they were willing to pay Charvarius Ward that, I guarantee you they snooped around J.C. Jackson and Carlton Davis. So if the fact that they were able to get for 5 more million and 1 more million per average per year, 5 million guaranteed, by the way, why not go after Carlton Davis? You know what I mean? So that was my concern at first. It's like when I seen the contract, I was like, why? Like, why are we? He hasn't traveled, and then I started thinking logically. What's up, my guy Jesse?
Ooh, Jesse.
So I started thinking logically. I was like, well, if we look at the 49ers and how they do things, they pay this younger guy who has the upside to be that receiver one. How's it going? So that's why they paid him. They paid him for the upside. I hope he travels, because if he does not travel,
that's what I tweeted. I was very, very interested to see if they tweet. But the one thing I'll say is with Charvarius Ward and Carlton Davis, I honestly think Carlton Davis really had like absolutely an inclination to go back. That's one thing that I think with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But also when you look at the structure of Carlton Davis's contract, it wasn't feasible for the 49ers in terms of, even if they paid him the $345, it wouldn't have been structured the same way. Carlton Davis actually got a huge, huge signing bonus of $24.5 million. He's getting a lot of money in that first year as well. He gets that huge signing bonus. And I know it's only 30 guaranteed, but I think that's kind of the part of the contract that the 49ers probably weren't able to compete with because of like the money that's paid up front. The cap hit is only $8 million, but I don't think that they would have been able to afford that type of signing bonus for the 49ers.
So quick question, because you're better on cap stuff and numbers and that kind of stuff than I am. Does a signing bonus go on any cap numbers, or is that just the owner signing off a check so they could come to your team?
So it does go on the cap, but the thing is, signing bonuses are spread for multiple years. So signing bonuses can be spread throughout the duration of the contract. So like the 24.5, right? Only 6 of that million, like Carlton Davis's base contract is going to be extremely low. I think how it works is like I'm sure the guarantee, like once the contract fully comes out, I'm sure it'll know. But I think his base salary is only 4.5 million this year. The signing bonus will equate it to around 8 million maybe in terms of total cap hit for this year, and then it escalates the years after. So signing bonus, you can spread it out and equate it over the entirety of the contract, but it is guaranteed money up front.
But the thing is, so now that you're telling me that it's spread over a couple of years, the cap goes up, right? In a couple of years, 49ers should have some more
Right.
cap with that going up. So that 5 million more over the 3-year span isn't much.
No,
You know
it's
what I
it's
mean?
it's a very fair
So,
argument. Definitely a very fair argument.
that's why when I seen it, because I initially that's what I did right away. I thought it was over the couple years of that contract it's spread out. So I'm thinking like, why not go after the better player who's but it is what it is. I do think Charvarius Ward is a very good corner. I think he's well, I started watching tape on him because to tell you the truth, I have not watched much Chiefs game because I don't I mean my grandfather is a Chiefs fan, so that I do watch a little bit of Chiefs with him, but I don't focus on him because I'm just so mesmerized with Patrick Mahomes and everything else they do. So I was watching him earlier today when I was in class, and his press technique is legit. And I
Yeah,
hope they
I
let him
like it. I
travel.
like it.
Yeah, and I hope they let him travel because the
Please
49ers,
travel,
even though
please.
they
You have
don't do it,
you have Ambry
you're
Thomas
paying
too.
him.
Both of them have the ability. Just
You're
please
paying
travel.
him 14 million a year. You better have your number one corner traveling on the best receivers of the opposing team because when he is impressed, even if you're impressed, you go to zone, whatever the case may be. If you are traveling, you take away the number one receiver of other teams. It makes life easier for everyone else. So I hope they do that because
Mhm.
if they don't, then they really did overpay. If we think about it, they overpaid if he does not travel, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love the signing, but you better let the guy travel.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say on Carlton Davis, somewhat jokingly, but dude, this guy Tom Brady, even when he's not linked to the 49ers, he finds a way to screw us, bro. Carlton Davis, like in a little video I think I saw, he said Tom Brady influenced my re-signing. I'm sure we're definitely in the mix if Tom Brady is out of the goddamn equation, but man, that guy. But yeah,
So
on Carlton Davis, or sorry, on Charvarius Ward, real quick. I do also like the signing for just the fact that he can play. I think the 49ers did see the CB1 upside, like you said, because unlike Emmanuel Mosley, who's a top end CB2, he has the size to play as a CB1. He's 6'1, around 205 pounds, 210 pounds. So he's got the size and the build. On top of that, his man press, I think that's the best facet of his game. And it shows the 49ers are willing to move and expand their scheme because Ambry Thomas, who's likely going to play in nickel packages outside corner alongside Charvarius Ward. He's a man press type of corner. He was better in man press than he was in zone last year. And they're going to start playing to his strengths. They started playing in a lot more man towards the end of the year when Ambry Thomas was a starter. And I think they're going to continue that. But Ward not only is a good man press corner, we've seen all the stats, the next gen stats that have posted over the last couple of years. But in addition, I think his consistency is important. He's played not well just for 1 year, but he's played well for 3 years. I thought his 2019 year was one of the better years as well. I thought that he had a little bit of a drop off in 2020, but I thought he played well in 2019 as well. And I think that like if you have the consistency, it's a young corner with CB1 upside. I understand it's a little bit of an overpay, but I don't think we're going to be worried a little bit too much about it, especially when the cap goes up. And that's how market value is going to be for cornerbacks like that. And the one thing, the 49ers really like these cornerbacks that can tackle. Like when you look at
oh
it
yeah.
on their roster, K'Wan Williams, great tackler. Emmanuel Mosley, he's physical. He can tackle. And Ambry Thomas is developing. He's still a solid tackler. And this guy is one of the better tacklers in all of football at the cornerback position, especially given his build. So I do think he fits the 49ers mold of a cornerback, which is why they probably were targeting high on their board.
And my favorite thing about Charvarius Ward is his confidence. His confidence level is through the absolute. It's the fact that you break up a pass on Jamar Chase, who has lit everyone up in the league as a rookie, and you hit the gritty in the end zone. You better expect that Jamar Chase is going to come back, and he's going to come back
Yeah.
firing. And sure enough, Jamar Chase came back and caught a touchdown on him, looked at him, and started hitting the gritty. So it's like you better have confidence as a corner because sure enough, Charvarius Ward has that, and that's what you need in this secondary. When you watch the secondary, not many of these players have that confidence that the Ward Bros have, right? So everyone sees Jimmy Ward. His confidence level is outrageous. He gonna talk his talk. He gonna make sure he goes on his Instagram feeds and say, oh, I can't wait for this game because I'm going to lock this dude up, this, and that, right? Charvarius Ward is going to fit right in with
We
him.
saw Ambry Thomas have that confidence too. Like, the good thing is, the signing of Charvarius Ward just fits the culture of the 49ers. They like these guys, the guys that embrace the challenge. And even after that game, right? I think that was week 17 when the gritty thing happened. Charvarius Ward ended up locking down Jamar Chase pretty much in that AFC Championship game. He played fairly well there as well. So you see the guys that accept the challenge and embrace it, and it's okay, because I think Charvarius Ward does get beat a bit over the top. That's the one negative kind of around him. He gets beat a bit over the top, but his recovery speed is good. And I do think that with the 49ers' ability to pass rush, right, they're a very good pass rush team where you don't have to play coverage for that long. And even if you do, when you have a guy with recovery speed like Charvarius Ward does have, and I think he's got good ability. I know the interception numbers aren't that high, but I think he's got good recovery speed and ability to make plays on the ball to disrupt these completions. So I think it's a good package of a corner. And when you match the personality with it, I think it fits the 49ers well.
I absolutely agree with you. So I know this wasn't planned, and I'm just throwing this out there right now, so you got to roll with me.
Go.
Let's do it rapid fire round, right? So we're gonna talk about players that the 49ers let walk. And when we talk about these players, give like a quick snippet on what you think about letting them walk. And that just a quick thing. You do it first. I'll go second, and then
Go for it.
So Raheem Mostert. So I seen it in the chat. Someone said, "How do we feel about Raheem Mostert?" Quick rapid fire.
I thought he was a good player. Thought the 49ers love to bring him back. $3.125 million, too expensive. I'm fine with letting him walk with that price.
So I actually wasn't a fan of bringing him back, even if it was cheap, because I want to go back and I want to get younger. I want to get healthier. And my biggest thing is getting younger and healthier in this offseason, because if we stay healthy the entire season, we are not battling for a wild card position. We are most likely sitting comfortably at 5 or even potentially even competing for the division. So I wanted to get younger. I wasn't a fan of bringing Raheem Mostert back. I understand the speed, but I'm fine with it. DJ Jones, what you think?
I thought if we're going to pay DJ Jones, it has to be only in the 6 to 8 million range. I wasn't really as high of a proponent of bringing him back just because Ark Armstead makes players look good. He's so underrated in both the pass and the run game. And I think that you can slot in any other guy and they're going to look fine. Kevin Givens and all these rotational pieces also look well. And I think we still have a strong rotational base. DJ Jones got way more than I expected. I thought it would be in the 8 million range. He got up to 10 million. So I thought at $10 million, just because of how the defensive tackle market was going, still fine at letting him walk as well.
So then we have Laken Tomlinson. What you think?
Laken Tomlinson, I thought the max the 49ers were going to pay were 9 to 10 million. It seemed like so evident that wasn't going to happen just because of the market. He got 13 million on the open market because Brandon Sheriff got reset the market. He was the second guy, high market. It was clear the 49ers were going to bring him back just because they don't value the guard position as much. Similar to DJ Jones. I mean, you got Trent Williams there. You got Aaron Banks sliding back to his natural position. Trent Williams, Alex Mack, they're going to make the guy in the middle look better. And I think Aaron Banks will definitely benefit from that. You got to go younger, like you said, and you got to start hitting or using these draft picks like the way you drafted them. So I think that since Aaron Banks had that second round pick, we got to see how he's going.
So I forgot to answer DJ Jones. So DJ Jones, I'm fine with letting him walk. I didn't think he was that great of a player like everyone was calling him. Everyone gives him this credit, but I don't think he's that great of a player. A great run stuffer, and that's it. So fine with letting him walk. Draft a player and replace him. Laken Tomlinson kind of hurt me that they let him walk. I thought that he was the main free agent they should re-sign, but not at that $13 million price range. Definitely could find someone younger and cheaper. Aaron Banks should fill in at left guard. Right guard looks like it's going to be Brunskill unless they bring someone in.
We should bring someone in.
They absolutely should, and have someone compete with him. Then we're going to talk about a guy. I know you're in love with him. It's your favorite player on the team, Tom Compton. He just signed with the Broncos. How do you feel?
I mean, Tom Compton, he was a solid replacement level guy last year, but that's the thing. I think a lot of people felt enamored with him because they see the PFF numbers, great run guy and all. I didn't think he was as valuable as like a top tackle in the NFL. I think he's a replacement level player, good solid replacement, and I do think we're going to get someone else at right tackle to compete with Michael Glinchey. I don't know exactly the contract numbers, but I'm fine with him going as well. The only thing that it hurts is we want offensive line depth, and Tom Compton would have provided that. Unfortunately, now he's gone. That's the one part that Tom Compton kind of filled in, and he knows the scheme well. He is a veteran. He's 32, so we might look to go younger at the position to get a veteran. Like we might look to go a 28-year-old type of guy, which I think could be better for the team. 49ers have kind of like looked to go younger in many positions with their free agent signings this year, and I think that that's going to be a theme that we continue to see. So that's something that I think about Tom Compton.
So when I think of Tom Compton, I think of a great run defender as a pass in pass pro.
Yeah.
I think hallelujah that they let him go away because I wasn't trying to see it again. So that's all I'll say on him. I know someone said in the thing some players we should sign. Should we look to looking back to re-sign Arden Key?
So currently, right, the 49ers now have 8 defensive linemen with the signing of Hassan Ridgeway on their team. They've got a solid amount of edge rushers. I know D Ford, a lot of people don't like him, but he is going to stay on this team for 2022 after they restructured his contract. So he's going to stay on the team. We got him, Armstead, although we consider him as the interior kind of pass rusher now. But Arden Key would be a very solid signing. I think, though, if Arden Key requires too much money, he said if the money's right, he'd return. And if he's looking to get that 79 million range, it just doesn't look like the 49ers are going to get it. This is a very deep edge class. We could look to double dip on edge in the draft with the amount of draft picks that we have. We could also look to trade up and select one of the better edges if they're higher on the 49ers board. I do think that if Arden Key wants to get in that 4 to 5 million range, it's okay. We can get him on a like somewhat of a long-term deal, maybe a 2-3 year deal, just because Arden Key was a very valuable guy. But I think what Chris Kosterik's kind of proven is we can get these guys we can get these guys on bargain signings and develop them. We've gotten guys like Jordan Willis before, Arden Key. We can name players and players. Kerry Hyder played very well, and he stunk it up in Seattle this past season. So we can get guys and develop them. So I definitely think that we can replace Arden Key if we need to with someone in free agency. But Arden Key would be a nice guy to bring back because of his age. I think that he could definitely be a good developable piece. Just depends on the money.
So I think they should think about it, but at the same time, like you're saying, like you have to look at the draft. You have to think about the cheaper versions that you could get productive play from, and you have guys like that you already traded for. You have Charles Omenihu, who you just traded for, that we have on the team. Samson Ebukam, who's still on the team, who started learning how to play the defensive end position, and he started coming into his own. So those are 2 guys that you could potentially even move inside to get some reps, and I think that's a very good possibility. So I think their plan is to let Arden Key go. I believe Arden Key needs one more prove-it deal the way he did in San Francisco in order for him to be that guy who gets a bigger payday. Someone did say the 49ers could look into trading Daniel Hunter. I don't know if they'll have the draft capital to do that. I know they could, but yeah, you have to. That's more so
a big contract.
More so the money. I know the draft capital they could turn around and give a second and a third or whatever and get a great player. But I believe he's in his 4th year on a $72 million contract.
His cap hit is $25 million. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a big cap hit. So I don't think that's possible. Someone actually said Queensberry. Should the 49ers bring in David Queensberry? Is someone we could look into to compete with Brunskill. They actually could bring him in. I know Rohan really likes him, so that's something they could do.
I think he's a solid pick because the thing that we want right now is a veteran replacement type of player. The 49ers kind of are in the stage where they're going to look for these bargain signings. And one guy that I really wanted was Morgan Moses. He got $5 million. I know that's too much for a veteran replacement or like a kind of a backup type of player. I thought that was a great deal by the Baltimore Ravens, a 3-year, $15 million deal for a guy who's been very durable throughout the entirety of his career. David Questonberry, I do think that the 49ers could definitely look to sign him because he's one of those remaining right tackles on the board. He was a very solid. He played fairly solid in according to PFF numbers and all last year. I thought that he played fairly well. I think it was Taylor Lewan who plays right tackle there or plays the tackle position, and he replaced Taylor Lewan due to injury last season. And he had a fairly solid season. I don't think that he's going to command a lot of money. I think, like you said with Arden Key, he'll be on another 1-year type of prove-it deal. And I think that he can push Mike McGlinchey in training camp at right tackle should Mike McGlinchey have some complications coming back from injury. So I do think that we should sign a veteran. David Questonberry was one of the guys that kind of popped up because he got released from the Titans this week. He would be a solid option, but it also depends on the money. If he's looking for a deal like Morgan Moses in that $4 to $5 million range, that's too expensive. But if he's looking on an incentive-based deal to potentially get potentially compete for a starting spot, if Mike McGlinchey doesn't work out, a $2 million deal with incentive base to get up to somewhere in that range, I wouldn't mind that at all.
So I don't know much about David Queensberry. So that's why I let you answer that question. I know he is a guard who could play tackle, so that is something they should actually look at. I
They like
know
the versatility. Yeah.
I know the versatility is there. He's a little bit older. I think he's 31 or 32. I don't know the exact age on him, but I know he's a little bit older. So that's something that the 49ers want to get younger. So I think that they kind of want to shy away from that.
That's the one caveat. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
That's the one
and
caveat.
and I noticed that they're trying to get younger based on like what they started doing last year, bringing in guys for next year, not necessarily guys that helped them win last year. So
right.
That's a very interesting thing.
It's a good argument. Like the two players that I think, if you want to predominantly have right tackles, the two players that can potentially get it. This isn't an entirely young tackle class. Normally, you don't see young tackles hit the market unless they're really not that great. But the two guys that we could potentially see at right tackle for the 49ers to sign in, that's Bobby Hart, who's I think 27 years old, and then the other guy was the guy who played in Chicago last year, Jermaine Fady, I believe is his name. Those are the two guys that the 49ers could potentially bring in as backup guys, younger players, and they have good traction on their legs as well to potentially compete with Mike McGlinchey in training camp.
So this question is more so a question. So how do you guys feel about 49ers signing Hassan Ridgeway today? We did talk about it earlier in the episode. We both really like the signing. So just to keep things flowing, we're gonna go ahead and let you go back and watch that one. But we do like him. What's up, Amin? Make sure you guys tap in with Amin the Dream. Make sure you guys subscribe to his channel. Young man is doing legendary stuff. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button on Amin the Dream. Let him know, Amin, in the comments what your YouTube name is, because that kid is a legend. Do you think the Niners can win the conference next year? Absolutely. I mean, the 49ers competing with the Rams, who the 49ers should have beat the Rams in the playoffs. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers they could be competing with. The way the 49ers are structured, they're structured to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. And that's the only teams that they're really competing with. I don't think the Packers got better. I think they got worse. I think they should definitely win the conference next year.
We said it, right? The 49ers are looking to get younger and more improved towards the future. When you look at teams this offseason, right, they're finally starting to face these ramifications of these big-time moves that they made in the past. The Rams couldn't retain Von Miller because of cap. And while they tried to, they were definitely in the mix, they couldn't retain Von Miller. And now there isn't really that top echelon pass rusher remaining on the market. There are a couple of very solid options, but they aren't. They also lost their starting defensive tackle, Sebastian Joseph Day, and they also lost their starting guard, Narston Corbett. And they don't really have replacement level players yet. I know they signed Joe Noteboom back, but it is going to be a drop off from left tackle Andrew Whitworth, who retired this offseason. So you definitely do have a couple of but a couple of downgrades for the Rams this offseason. I don't think anybody else, obviously Seattle got way worse, and I don't think Arizona really has moved the needle that much. They've just retained their players and signed a couple of low-key guys like Jeff Gladney at cornerback. They haven't really moved the needle that much, and they were, in my opinion, the third best team in the division last year. So the 49ers should be primed to at least compete for, at least be in play for the top, to win the division next year and gain home field advantage. Obviously, we know they played very well at Levi's in terms of with the home crowd. So that definitely could be a potential to win the conference next year. When you look at the other teams, like you said, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they lose Ali Marpet, which is a big deal. I know they got Shaq Mason via trade, so they're still a fairly strong team. I think they're the main competitors. The Green Bay Packers did get worse this offseason. They lose to Darius Smith. I know they re-signed Preston Smith. Aaron Rodgers, that deal is going to hurt them a little bit financially in trying to retain some of these guys. We don't know what they'll do with Devontae Adams. He does not want to play on the franchise tag, so it's going to be $30 million as well. So they're kind of losing some of these guys, and so it'll be a little bit of it'll be a little hard for them to retain players as well. 49ers are one team that kind of consistently stayed the same, or even potentially got a little better in free agency here. Oh boy. This is going to be a fun topic. I want you to go first and explain your take.
Absolutely do not bring Jaquiski Tartt back. Think about it, guys. This guy's he's out there in free agency. So, all right, let me break it down and let me explain why they should not bring him back. He has no market for him in the NFL right now. Teams could sign a very cheap safety in this market, right? Yet they're not signing him. Why? This is the NFL telling us what they think of Jaquiski Tartt, in my opinion. Why are we going to bring back a player that the NFL doesn't think should be on their roster to run it back with a player who is not that good? He's good, but he's not as good as people claim him to be. He's not as good as he calls himself. And I don't care. He might end up using my clip and posting it like, oh, the dude don't know what he's talking about. I don't care.
Tartt, please do that. Jaquiski Tartt, please do that. But yeah, go ahead.
I don't care. So Jaquiski Tartt is a guy who I think he, for a good portion of his career, he's dealt with injury concerns. He can't get through a full season playing every game. So we're going to bring that guy back in who can't even get a deal when he had a career year last year and no one wants him. But we're going to bring him back to run it back when we couldn't win with him. Why not go younger? There was a lot of safeties on the market that they could have signed. There was a lot of them. There Xavier Woods signed. A lot of these players want to stay with these teams, but in reality, the 49ers should just let them walk, draft someone in the draft. That's exactly the route they should go. If they re-sign him, it's going to be on a 1 year, $1 million deal. He should not command anything more than that from the 49ers. From what I've heard, the 49ers will not bring him back. I'd be absolutely shocked if they bring him back based on the stuff that I've heard. That's absolute truth from what I've heard. So if they bring him back, I won't show up to the next after that episode. I won't show up because I'd be absolutely shocked from what I've heard. All right, Jaquiski Tartt should not be on the 49ers, and then that's plain and simple because when we think about Jaquiski Tartt, a lot of people in spaces right now, and it bugs me, right? So a lot of people are in spaces right now, and they were talking about Jaquiski Tartt, and the play they bring up is, well, the 49ers wouldn't have won the game against the Green Bay Packers. Yeah, the Aaron Jones play. Well, guess what? The 49ers wouldn't have won if Jimmy Ward didn't block that field goal, and they wouldn't have won if they didn't get a blocked punt to get a touchdown.
Stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then in spaces, when you want to mention a certain play in a championship game to go to the Super Bowl, they don't want to talk about it. They say, but he saved the game-winning touchdown. Brother, if we're going to talk about plays where he saved, let's talk about the production of the when you get your hands on a ball as a safety, as a corner, you better intercept those balls. You got to make the quarterback pay, the offense pay, right? So when he didn't drop that catch, he already has no production in terms of being a ball hawk or being a good ball skills guy, in my opinion. So then you drop that and it's like, all right, I was trying to make it work for you. And I understood what people were saying, the chemistry and everything, but then you have an opportunity to shut that narrative down of being having good ball skills and taking away the ball, and you don't. When you had the easiest opportunity you've ever had in your career, but you could go ahead and one-hand interception against the Carolina Panthers, but you can't catch that. Like, come on, man. Don't bring him back. That's all I got. Don't bring him back.
So me personally, I obviously have a differing opinion. I've kind of been consistent with my take. I do think the 49ers could bring Jaquiski Tartt back, and here's what I'll say. I'll go statistically. I think Jaquiski Tartt had one of the best seasons of his career this past season. And the thing is, he was available. He played in 14 games in the season, in the regular season of the 17 possible games. And he also was a fairly solid corner in coverage. When you look at it, he only allowed a 57.6 completion percentage in coverage, and that's a fairly solid take for a safety, especially when you consider the safety positions that are like the positions that safeties are in. And when you look at it, Jaquiski Tartt, I think, is a very aggressive run defender, and I think that's what the 49ers value. They value these guys that are able to at least not only shut down players in the run game, but also create opportunities for other players. And I think that's what Jaquiski Tartt does, just because I think he's one of the more instinctive players. He can fill in these holes. And I do think that, yeah, I mean, it's not wrong. Like we can't take that out of the equation, right? Jaquiski Tartt is not really the playmaker that other safeties are. And there's a reason that other safeties get paid more than Jaquiski Tartt. I'm nowhere here. I'm not going to say at all that Jaquiski Tartt is better than a Marcus Williams, better than a Marcus May, better than a Jordan Whitehead, better than a Tyrann Mathieu. Jordan Whitehead may be questionable, but when you look at it, Jaquazi Tart, in my opinion, he is a seamless fit in this kind of with the 49ers, just because I think he's versatile. I think that he can cover. I also think that he can put him in the box and have him in the run game. So I do think that he's got both facets in his game. He's a fairly solid athlete. We saw it. I know you just brought up the 2 plays, right? I think there was a good play against the Eagles and also a good play against the Green Bay Packers. You see the athlete in him as well. The only issue, in my opinion, with Jaquazi Tart is the injury history. He does have an injury history, but I think that also that's one of the reasons why we can bring him back. And we can bring him back on a good contract if Mario gets Spike of the Year. I mean, I'm not against it. So I do think that Jaquazi Tart, if the 49ers do want to look to get a safety at a fairly high caliber, I think that he can be brought back on a cheap deal. The 49ers are looking for bargain deals this year, especially being near cap constraints. And I think Jaquazi Tart fits that bill. And the thing is, I don't disagree that we should draft a safety. I do think we should draft a safety this year. And especially if we get a second in this draft for Jimmy Garoppolo, guess what? You can take an edge rusher with that first safety, or edge rusher with that first pick and a safety with that second pick. And I do think that you can have a solid safety rotation. They tried it with Talanoa Hufanga last year. I like the 3 safety sets that San Francisco runs. And I do think that if you have a safety that you drafted along with the 2 safeties in Ward and Tart, I do think that you can have a fairly consistent defensive back trio in a way that you can rotate in and out, preserve health as well, and play at high caliber, because the 49ers right now, they're looking for pieces that are depth. And in the draft, they're going to look at BPA, and there's going to be a good safety on the board. If they draft a safety at 61, I think that there'll be a solid safety on the board. I know a lot of people are saying Lewis Cine. I do think he gets drafted earlier, but there are good safeties on this class. If Jaquan Brisker drops, there's going to be a solid safety. And I do think that, the 49ers have, in the past 2 years, they've found a way to ease these players into their roles. I think that they've found a way to compete in the present while also competing in the future. We saw that with Trey Lance. We were seeing that with Aaron Banks. We were seeing that with Trey Sermon. And Elijah Mitchell wasn't even primed to be that starter last year, but he stepped in and performed admirably. So I think that if you can get these guys reps, but not necessarily burden them with a huge amount of responsibility in their first year, because I don't think if we draft a safety, he'll probably start. I don't think that that'll happen. But if we don't burden them with a good amount of responsibility, but get them meaningful reps, I think that primes them better for their career. And the 49ers have kind of found a system in which they can do that. I think that bringing back Tart brings back a very good system fit who knows the system for the last 8 years. And I understand that that's not necessarily the biggest reason why you bring back Tart, but I think that that's an important thing for the 49ers. And it also bridges them well for the next safety, because I think he's instinctive, and I think he can kind of relay those traits onto the next guy that kind of precedes him for the 49ers for years to come. But you're right. There is a reason why Jaquazi Tart isn't getting a market. I don't necessarily think that it's related to Jaquazi Tart fully. I do think the safety market is a little dry, right? We see Tyrann Mathieu still not without a deal. And we saw some of these safeties kind of take a little bit to get a deal. There are a good amount of safeties on the board, though, too. We got Landon Collins.
A lot of safeties actually signed. So we had Marcus May signed. He's injured. He signed.
You're right.
And actually
you're right.
a pretty big contract. Marcus Williams signed. He's a younger player. He signed a big contract. Xavier Woods signed. He's a safety.
Xavier Woods was the one guy, but what I meant was the guys in Jaquazi Tart's kind of caliber, right? We haven't seen many of them signed yet. And Landon Collins, we haven't seen a guy like Terrell Edmonds sign. We haven't seen a guy like Jabril Peppers sign. We haven't seen like those type of caliber players, the younger group of safeties who people might view as starters or even solid backups. We haven't seen them signed yet. And so that's why I'm thinking I'm not necessarily as worried about Tart's market, but that's also why I'm thinking the 49ers can get him back in a bargain, because there are so many, there's a good amount of these guys that the 49ers might just have their pick of the litter, and they might pick back the guy that they're kind of comfortable with over the past couple of years. But if the 49ers don't re-sign Jaquazi Tart, there are a good amount of safeties that they could still sign and plug and play at starting safety. Some of the names I just mentioned as well. And I mean, even if they even want a coverage guy, they can get a guy like Anthony Harris, who had a fairly solid season in Philadelphia last year, coming on a one-year deal, who's also a veteran. And if they want to, they want to help bridge another guy, he could be a solid guy. So there's a good amount of safeties, but I am part of the proponent for bringing back Jaquazi Tart, just because I think that he will be a cheap deal. He knows the system well, and he's got a good two-way ability with the pass and the run. And he could pass on his instinctive traits to whoever the next guy is.
So going on to another tangent. You and I were talking about it, and I was like, I'll just talk about it. We'll talk about it on the pod. Debo Samuel. All right. So everyone talks about Debo Samuel and why he should get extended this year and everything. What's the price range looking like for Debo Samuel? Because I know you're good on all these numbers and everything. We just saw Chris Godwin, who signed a 3-year, $60 million deal, and I believe it's $40 million guaranteed. What's the price range for Debo? Because everyone's talking about Debo is going to get the Brinks trucks backed up and everything because of the Christian Kirk deal. So everyone thinks that Debo is going to get paid, and so does Debo. So what do you think?
So real quick on the Christian Kirk deal, I'm not necessarily as concerned about it in terms of the long term, like in terms of players that are going to get long term contracts. We obviously heard Christian Kirk 4 years, what, $82 million or $72 million, whatever the deal was. It's a huge amount of money. But in reality, this deal for Christian Kirk is a 2-year deal. It's a 2-year, $39 million deal that the Jacksonville Jaguars can get out of. And I don't kind of place that type of deal with Debo Samuel's market, because when you look at short-term extensions, teams that are like the Jacksonville Jaguars will overpay for these short-term extensions to try and get value, to try and boost the rebuilds or try and boost the play of their quarterback, their young quarterback. So I don't necessarily place these shorter-term deals, because even if it's a 4-year deal, it's really a 2 and 2. It's a 2-year deal, and so that's why I don't really place it in the level of a Debo Samuel deal. But 2 months ago, I kind of wrote an article on what a projection for Debo Samuel's contract could be. And I said 5 years, $120 million, $24 million a year with the potential of a 3-year out, because Debo Samuel is already 26 years old. I think he's going into his age 26 season this year. And so when you look at it, I think a 5-year deal is fine, but I think you need that 3-year out. And I think the 49ers always have this 3-year out with their contracts, be it Fred Warner, Art Armstead, George Kittle, and probably with Samuel and Bosa. And I'm forgetting one other guy off the top of my mind, but those are the guys that they've given these 3-year outs to. And I think it's very beneficial in Debo's case, because when you look at it, Trent Williams, the other guy, but when you look at it, Debo Samuel, right, he's a very good player. He does have the injury history and he's a little older. So if the 49ers realize that he's a little too injured and he just doesn't fit in the long-term plans after that 3-year mark, they can get out of it and have very minimal financial impact on them for their future. But if Debo Samuel proves to be a very good player and they think that he can consistently produce for the next couple of years, they can also choose to extend him for another year at that age 29 season, extend him until he's 32 or 33. I don't think they do that. I think they ride out that 5-year deal instead. But I think that they have the option potentially to sign him for the majority of his prime. And if he plays well, play out the duration of his contract before letting him walk or whatever at age 31. But I do think that Debo Samuel right now, I think the Chris Godwin deal kind of helps him, because Chris Godwin, I know you're going to talk on him a little bit. I think Chris Godwin is somewhat of a a similar caliber to Debo Samuel. I understand the ACL injury, but $20 million for Chris Godwin, $20 million for Mike Williams kind of puts the range right now at $24 million, I think, or $25 million a year for Debo Samuel. But I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Debo Samuel?
So for me, Debo Samuel shouldn't have to be extended until after next year, right? They could slap the franchise tag on him after next year and then negotiate a deal. So Debo's rookie year was a good rookie year for a rookie. It wasn't great. People like to say, "Oh, Debo was great his rookie year." No, great
real
was
quick,
Jamar Chase.
You already on Twitter, boy? You already on Twitter about the Tart thing?
I'm already on Twitter about the Tart thing. He
Yeah,
said,
that's fine. But
that's
go
hella
ahead.
funny.
That's one of the boys.
That's funny. So, when I'm talking Debo Samuel's contract, right? It's like 49ers don't have to pay Debo Samuel this year. They could let it play out. They could get him to play another year on his contract, which he's under. He could potentially be like, "Oh, I'm just not going to show up to camp," blah, 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 which he might. Do I think he will? No, because I don't think he's that kind of guy. I think he's going to show up for his team. But so his rookie year was good. Wasn't great like people say. Jamar Chase was a great rookie year. That's great. His second year, injured. Then he played 8 games, but he was still banged up those 8 games. Comes in his third year in the season. He plays at an all-pro caliber player, right? He showed the ability to play at that level. So that's 1 year of elite playing level. I need more than that if I'm going to pay you for that kind of player, right? So I would rather say, hey, you know what? I'm going to bring you in this year, and then next year we'll negotiate a contract, or even towards the end of the year, if you're balling out of control, I'll extend you. I'll pay more if I have to after the season, rather than trying to get a discount for a player that, who knows, he might not be able to stay healthy. He might not be as good as he was this year with Trey Lance. We've seen Debo Samuel with Jimmy Garoppolo, which is a different style of passing attack. He might even be better with a downfield passing attack with Trey Lance. But I'm not saying Debo Samuel isn't good or doesn't deserve the money. What I'm saying is we got to wait before we pay him, because if we pay him a little early and he doesn't stay healthy, then we're in a situation like D Ford's. D Ford is a good player. Why did KC get rid of him? Because of the injuries. 49ers paid him a stupid amount of money. But going on to Debo again, Chris Godwin, in my opinion, is a better receiver than Debo Samuel. That's my opinion, that he is a better receiver. Chris Godwin is a legit, true number one receiver. He's been in the same receiving room, and his statistics aren't great his first couple years. He was in a receiving room with Mike Evans. He was in a receiving room with Antonio Brown last year. He was the number one receiver on that team last year. Chris Godwin is a better receiver than Debo. Debo is a better athlete than Chris Godwin. He's used differently than Chris Godwin. So when I look at Chris Godwin coming off an ACL injury, getting $20 million a year, I think Debo's going to get paid, but I don't think he should be getting paid like Chris Godwin. There's a quote, and I'm going to find the quote so I can send it to you. Kyle Shanahan's talking about Debo Samuel, and essentially he's pretty much saying Debo Samuel is a glorified running back. He's explaining how Debo is a running back body who does receiver traits really good. Never used elite, never used great when he explained it. He said he's a running back body. He could do everything a running back does very, very good, but he also happens to be a very good receiver and capable of doing receiver-like things. So for me, it's like, well, why are you if that's your best receiver, shouldn't you be like, he's a great receiver, you know what I mean? So for me, it's the money, the injury history, plus having to see the production for more than just 1 year. But I think Debo's going to get paid. Or if not, the fan base is going to go crazy. And I'm going to stay away from Twitter for a couple of days during that period if anything happens like that. But I think it's going to be an interesting negotiation with Debo Samuel, because he's considering himself a wide back. And I don't know if the 49ers are going to value running back / receiver like that. You know what I mean? Like, you could find playmakers that are younger and cheaper that could be a running back hybrid version of a receiver. So it's going to be very interesting. They're not going to be at the same production level as Debo, but you could find those kind of guys who could do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's it's not, maybe I won't say fair, but it's a good argument, because the one thing, like, I've been on Twitter Spaces the last couple of days, and there's a guy, Donnie, who's very enamored with Debo Samuel and is willing to pay him $27 million a year. And I brought up a very similar argument to what you just said, and I said Debo Samuel right now, this past year, took a lot of hits to his body, and I know he said he isn't worried about it, but the thing is, that type of play isn't really we haven't ever seen a player like that take that many hits and play that durably over the course of a 5-year deal like that. And that's why I brought up the idea of a three-year out. But the thing is, Debo Samuel, if he plays like this a lot more, he probably is bound to get injured. I mean, we've seen the injury concerns. We saw a lot of times where Debo Samuel was injured just this year. And the argument of him playing, 16 games or something, I don't think that's a valid argument, because he was injured in games. He played through it, but that type of thing is not consistent. Like, you can't play like that consistently just because of the toll it takes on your body. And for you to offer that much money and have an injured type of player, I don't think D. Samuel is going to be an injury-prone type of player, but he's shown injury issues before, and it's just his play style, right? He plays like a physical guy. He said it himself. He plays like a running back. He played running back before he got to college. He plays like a running back, and that type of physical style, we've seen how running backs wane out in the NFL towards their late 20s. I think Debo Samuel is different. I do think he can have he can sustain longevity, but he has to kind of change his style. And if the counter argument to that is, well, the 49ers aren't going to use him like they used him this year. Well, guess what? You're paying him like you're using him this year. And so if you're going to decrease his production level by in order to preserve his body, then you're not paying him like a $27 million wide receiver. And so that was the argument that I've made up. And I don't think that they're going to let Debo Samuel walk. I do think that they extend him this year. And I'm actually for the proponent of extending him this year as opposed to extending him next offseason. The reason being, This year, you have 3 receivers that are bound to get, or 4 receivers actually that are bound to get extensions apart from Debo Samuel. Devontae Adams, who's looking to reset the market with 30 plus million a year. And then you got AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, and DK Metcalf, all likely looking to get extensions. And we don't know if they're going to get them this year. But the thing is, all of them are not, they're not first round picks, which means all of them are unrestricted free agents next year. So I don't know if all 4 get extensions, but the teams have to re-sign them this year unless they want them to hit the open market next year. And so it will be a race to it will be a race to who signs them first, but it's going to be expensive. Go ahead.
But even they don't even hit the open market though. You could tag them. You could
You're right. You're right.
Let me slap the tag on you for 2 years in a row if they really wanted to do that kind of route.
Yeah.
Good teams don't do that. I mean, good teams don't fight, like, realistically, like, good teams don't do that kind of business. So they shouldn't do that kind of business. But I'm saying, like, realistically, if they really wanted to, they could tag him and then work out a long-term extension because he's already 26. So the way his body is used, next year he'll be 26. Let's say he gets a 3-year deal. He'll be 29 after that 3-year deal.
Right.
He could cash in again. So
right.
I would rather see a deal like Chris Godwin's, and that's why I brought up Chris Godwin, because I think Chris Godwin is a better receiver than Debo, but I think Debo's a better athlete. So that's a comparable number because you're getting $40 million guaranteed. So that's essentially you're getting $20 million the first couple years. Dude, why not? You know what I mean? Like the first year, you're most likely going to get the salary cap is going to be lower because the 49ers, how they always do it.
Yeah.
But you're still going to get your money. And I think that's what the 49ers should do, allow him to reset the market when he turns 29 if he could stay healthy. And that's what he should want. Honestly, that's what he should do. And I think that's why Chris Godwin went for the 3-year deal to reset that market at 29 because you get one more big contract when the salary cap goes up and everything. So that's what the 49ers should be looking at, not necessarily looking at a 5-year deal because essentially if Debo gets a 5-year deal, let's say he does play out that deal at year 3, he's gonna want to re-up anyways.
Right, but it does give the team flexibility. That's the reason that I said the 5 with the 3 out. It gives the team flexibility, but it also gives Debo flexibility. And the thing is, the one caveat with that is, like, I personally do think that both sides will be looking for an extension this year because Debo Samuel knows his injury history. He knows that potentially if he plays on this on a $3 million contract and he gets injured, potentially a long-term injury, he could be risking a good amount of millions on his next deal. That's the one thing. And the 49ers will be inclined to franchise tag Debo Samuel at age 27, going into his age 27 season next year if he gets injured, because they're not going to want to pay that much money when they don't know how he'll be after his injury, given how explosive and how much of an athlete he is. So I do think that both sides will look to an extension this year. But I agree with you in that if the 49ers do not extend him this offseason, I don't think they extend him. I do think they franchise tag him for 1 year, potentially franchise tag him for 2 years, and then maybe look to trade him or, let him walk, something like that.
And the thing, so I want to make sure I clear this up too. Like, I'm very pro player in terms of paying players, but at the same time, we have to look at it as a business as well. Like, we can't. So for me, I've had this issue where I'm so pro player that I want the 49ers to pay these players big bucks. So even when they're on our team, like with George Kittle, Fred Warner, like I wanted them to get their bag, but at the same time, it's like you have to look at the business side of things. So this is me just looking at the business side of it and not necessarily the player side of it, because the player side, I'm saying, hey, go get your bag. I mean, like, go get your bag. You know what I mean? But for business side, I'm saying, let's let him play this year out. Hopefully he plays at elite level again. And then you pay the shit out of him because he's going to be like, well, yesterday's price isn't today's price. So, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm thinking. We've been on for an hour and 30, Rohan. I think we're good. We talked some good stuff. We talked free agency. So if you guys missed the episode, we talked free agency, talked Jimmy Garoppolo, Deshaun Watson carousel, QB carousel that's going on. We talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Hopefully he's gone soon. Not any offense to him or anything. But 49ers need to move on and let Trey Lance take over.
Yeah, we talked a lot. We talked the free agency too. We talked Deshaun Watson. So packed episode. If you guys missed any part, make sure you guys check out the beginning part of this. But before we can tune off, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Be sure to be on the lookout. Have that post notifications on, because whenever we go live, guys, we love to talk football and we're here with our information. And be on the lookout, because a Jimmy Garoppolo trade could happen as soon as tomorrow, but it could happen a couple days later. And trust me, I'll go live as soon as that happens. And we'll
Yes,
bring
sir.
Marco on too. Even if it's without that video, we're bringing Marco on too.